I'm Danielle. I work at the library, the Carnegie branch of the Vancouver Public Library. We're gathered here today on stolen and unceded lands of the Musqueam and peoples. I'm delighted to be introducing NIKKI REIMER. They are going to be presenting their project Griefwave for the Community Death Care Project. This is the Community Death Care Project. Maybe just a hand if you put up your hand if you've been to a Community Death Care Project event. Nice to see some familiar faces. This is a site-specific project. It's made for and with community members in the downtown Eastside and Chinatown. And it was developed in collaboration with the library and the Carnegie Center. Beverly Walker in the back is one of the people who is organizing, and we've got Chris Slater to the left, my left, who's offering some tech support. And as you know, it is a project, it's a year-long project that focuses on death and dying. Through the better part of the year, this is kind of the midway point of the project. A lot of the activities have been more information-based. We've been focusing on wills and estate planning. To last week, we had a funeral director come in who fielded every single question under the sun that you might have for a funeral director. And now we're turning to some more creative pursuits. Not that one. So it's kind of hit or miss. So although NIKKI is joining us from Calgary, they once lived in Vancouver, and some of us in the room here know NIKKI pretty well. Oddly, it took NIKKI and I, both of us had to participate in a residency at the Banff Center in 2013, where NIKKI was starting this project. So very much in its nascent form, I felt I was present for at least one or two of the waves. NIKKI is a multimedia artist and writer, chronically ill, neurodivergent prairie settler currently living in Calgary. She's been involved with art and writing communities primarily in Calgary and Vancouver for over 20 years. They are the author of 3 books of poetry. You can get them at the library, and multiple essays on grief. Griefwave, a multimedia web-based extended elegy, was published in February of 2022. Frequent themes are feminism, the body, the Anthropocene, late capitalism, death, grief, loss, and animal subjectivity. So as described, this is a digital elegiac response to the life and death of NIKKI REIMER's brother, a Calgary indie-based musician. NIKKI is going to present for about 30 minutes or so, and then we're going to have some room at the end if anybody has any questions. Recently, NIKKI and I, we had a conversation just about the Community Death Care Project and just the beginnings of NIKKI's work and their encounter with so much death phobia. People are adverse to talking about it, and I'm really glad to invite NIKKI, who doesn't shy away from anything, let alone death. So.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Thanks to everyone who has shown up in space and in virtual space. I'm honored to share a multi-dimensional space with you for the next little while. So I live and am joining you today from the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. In addition to Danielle, who brought me here tonight and who, was present for the initial stages of this project back in 2013, I'd like to thank the Canada Council for the Arts and the Banff Centre for the Arts for support of this project. Though I'm zooming into you from Calgary, Blackfoot named Mohkinstsis, Vancouver is my spiritual home. I do have family in the region. I lived there from 2004 to 2012, and I do hope to return to live there one day. I had the chance while I was in Vancouver to attend some readings and some workshops at Carnegie. And so, I'm just honored to get to have this presentation in that space. Is it a universal impulse to communicate with the dead? For the first years after my brother died, I would tweet to him, "Dear Chris, you are still the funniest," or "Dear Chris, I miss you at every age." These tweets were both unconscious acts of grief and a deliberate choice to shout into the void and to perform shouting into the void and perform the ways that grief makes you feel upside down, as if all you can do is shout into the void. As Danielle mentioned, the project is an elegiac response to the life and death of my brother, Chris Reimer, a Calgary-based musician who passed away in 2012. It is also a meditation on the oscillating nature of loss and grief and the ways that mourning changes when it takes place in public and digital spheres. Griefwave is a web-hosted project, and you can see it in its entirety at griefwave.com. Every time I get to present it in front of an audience, though, will be different. And so this is the version for tonight's Carnegie Library event. For the next 30 minutes, I'll take you on a tour through the website, stopping to talk about how or why I made certain choices, then letting you listen and witness. The entire website is structured like a wave, meaning that as well as moving forwards and backwards through the website pages, you can move across it, amplifying or softening the page you're already on. So there are multiple paths through it. I built it this way to mimic the waves of grief that hit a person in mourning, because you don't always move forwards, and often you don't move forwards, you move backwards and sideways and around and around and around. The project is also a collaboration. I've taken poems, drawings, and music that Chris left behind, and I've woven them into soundscapes and image collages, and I've written poems in response to poems that I found in his writings. Griefwave is a dream fragment, an electronic wind chime, a sound wave. I've tried to gather up all the materials of my grief and form them into something new, something that might speak to the grief process and speak to the ways that we might continue to converse with our dead even while they're gone. For the next 5 or so minutes, I'll navigate through the site, and it will be more of a listening experience. And then I'll come back to keep talking to you about what we're seeing and to continue the tour. Every edit, a distortion. Every extraction sends you further out. I'm in your hard drive, stealing your clothes. No picture tells the entire story. Lean into the traces. There are no echoes. There are only echoes. It is fall. It is always fall. It is fall. It is always fall. It is fall. It is always fall. It is fall. It is fall. It is always. It is always. It is fall. It is fall. It is always. It is fall. It is always fall. It is always fall. They could have been right all along. Maybe every moment was precious, every breath important. Warm air caresses my face. White drifts slowly through blue, passing over land. A messenger for those who choose to pay attention. Alcoholics can control a slight swagger, get used to their disease. Who can get who to figure two, learn to ignore the clock. Mistake looking at one and quickly forgot the story it told. How much we've spun since you last noticed. Did time take place, just incidents, just accidents, all aligned neatly with a framework already in place? I am not anything but my own decay. Every step brings us closer, pulses the time along. The second every step lands, it changes direction, becomes the past. Future step forward, present step landing, and past step taken, all one motion. Death, birth, and gaining knowledge, all in one vessel. There weren't three ghosts, there was only one. Three different eyes looking at it. No, a million different ways, a million different spirits teaching a million different lessons. The eventual waning or imminent death that they all represent is just another step, another lesson. I breathe it in again. I think too much. Maybe I'm not. Bring my head back, look out the window again. I'm inside, but I think I'm in a huge field somewhere. Footsteps, fucking doorbell. High rollers that jump to get higher, blackballing the corn petition, raking the eyes, justifying the leaf spreading, update our photos, a lot of specific history. Where do we use history? Increase your density, electric surge straight through a pole. Senator spit 12 years counting shoes, hold the rejection. Didn't mean to say I love you. Rabbits jerk off on your garden. Yeah, fuck you. With this project, I was gathering up the materials, songs, texts, images that my brother left behind, responding to them and forming them into new digital objects. On this page, you can see a picture my brother took of abandoned farm equipment on the site of our grandfather's former farm outside of Stettler, Alberta. Because my grandfather died before either Chris or I were born, he too is a ghost who haunts this picture. The rabbit drawing came from an old book illustration. I used Photoshop to collage them together. Grief is abandon and absence, but sometimes it is the presence of your loved one, who they were, how they loved, their sense of humor. Sometimes grief is after image and echo, a picture of the long gone footsteps of your father's father. Sometimes it's in your face and funny, a rabbit jerking off in your garden. This map at the right of the screen shows Strathcona Beach Park in Kelowna, BC, which is where my brother and I played as children in the summers when we visited our grandparents. This star marks the approximate spot where I illegally let some of his ashes go into Lake Okanagan the summer after he died. So somewhere in here. a lot of what I was doing with this project felt like chasing Chris, trying to catch up to where he was and what he might possibly be doing, you know, on the other side, whatever, wherever that is.
The thought of dying while awake is seen as concrete and eventual. One day, unfortunate circumstances will befall everyone, whether it be being hit by a bus or expiring from some natural cause. It is accepted, whereas the idea of dying within a dream by some cause of the dream seems absurd. We are in control of our own reality, and something that isn't real is just a misfired synapse, a thought, nothing. Almost everyone has experienced a dream so vivid that to wake up was a shock because of the seeming reality of the experience. Very often these dreams will linger in the memory for some time and can prompt uneasy feelings towards someone that was part of the dream. So dreams must exist on the same level as thought or as memory, which can prompt action as well. When an individual has been harmed emotionally or physically, the harbored resentment towards the antagonist can cause negative action after a very long time has passed. So then what is the difference between an adverse reaction based on a dream or that of one based on a memory of an actual event? They both have a similar outcome. Even if a dream of a holiday is hazy, it can be the same as the memory of being intoxicated on said holiday. So if dreams and memory have the same outcome and residual effects on relationships, what separates them? The fact that memory is believed to be real. One could have vivid memories of their childhood that could have never happened. If the family tells them enough times the same story, they'll come to believe it. Lies become real. Thoughts become action. Everyone who has died in their sleep hasn't made any substantial claims to prove it wasn't because they died in their dream.
Sometimes I was looking for him on the internet where people were talking about him because his band Women was popular in indie music in the years before and at the time of his death. I found it both really comforting and really gross that there were news articles and blog posts talking about my brother. I included this image that I found in this video because it seems so obscene and absurd that this image of him could be purchased from Getty Images for $575. The dissonance was in my mind was really hard to fathom. Here he is on stage with his band in Spain in 2009. Oh, the magic of Windows. Eventually, the public discourse fades and you are left with what you found and what you can remember.
Every time calmly pluck out her eyes and get them in the bread box until she felt safe again. Her elbows would chatter, but she knew it was for the best. This made the drive to Mexico very arduous. Quick, come home, quick! Bundle her in blankets and rosy the cheeks. All the doors are open. Stop coming unannounced. The argument here being that the yellow was almost gone from all the lights, and on occasion the sun would move like birds. At noon it would scatter its very own self, spread across the entire sky, flapping and chirping. The beauty of these noises was only overcome by the blinding white light and desert heat that pierced the facade of each citizen. The light, they said, would surely kill us all, at least until nightfall. Then we would all stand up like a shout, dancing. The movement throughout the streets was like a score. Our life in the house was all played out on the street every day, but we very much pretended not to notice. I always thought Sister was the fire hydrant and I was the sky. I never mentioned this aloud, but would glare it in my head at her over the morning cereal when I was feeling cranky. And each time we fell in love, the world would go dark and light very fast, like blinking. We once had a litter of puppies. It was night and day arguing. They couldn't decide between themselves whose moment it was. Little brother had a short spell of convulsions. We brought him water. Sister panicked and was sent to rip sheets and boil water. When brother was feeling well, we all drank tea and named young dogs the names of old men and ships. Large boats with painted women guiding the way, showing how unimportant we all were. Sister was a ship. I felt bad about her panic, so I told her so. She kissed my cheek and we built a tire swing for ourselves and others if they wanted to use it. We would build trees in the winter out of old clothes and wigs. We would build trees and then climb to the top.
That was a poem that Chris wrote that I found in his notebooks that I thought was really poignant and beautiful. So I wrote a response to it.
The year was always either
1987
or 2087.
Or 2087.
We left New Mexico in the morning. It was evening in Sweden. The shimmering lakes in your eyes marked the end of the highway. Mother and father disappeared following the electric string beam incident. It's been decades or days. I can't tell. The clocks have gone cold. 1,000 incandescent suns dot the map of each absence. The graveyard blinking off and on our neon desert of dreams. Your chest has stilled, but I'll sit here in grandfather's chair till you wake up. The baking's gone moldy, and the cans are all rusted. I need you to finish ironing the tablecloth. Is this blasted pantry disgusting or righteous? Swollen cake? Rubber cats? Who is watching the time? Someone forgot to close the window. Now the piano's all dusty. We are far from Telegraph Hill. but the parrots continue to circle, such flashes of red brilliance, green horror, the dawn. I was having a good visit with Chris in my dream until I remembered that he was dead and told him so. He turned into a 6-foot-tall, angry, stuffed rabbit and raged at me. I found this rabbit picture on a stock image site. I really love it. His whole expression really speaks to me. The background image is a picture Chris took on one of his band tours. And like everything else that we found in his things, they're objects, and you'll never know the story behind them. I'm going to play a couple more pages for you, and then I'll return in a few minutes. The phrase, "the cadence is time back and forth beating," appeared in a stream of consciousness fragment or poem that my brother had written in one of his notebooks, and I found it both simple and profound. Cadence being either a modulation or inflection of voice, what I'm doing now as I modulate my speech to you, or the beat, time, or measure of rhythmic motion or activity, the cadence of your heart, the cadence of the heartbeat of time marching simultaneously forward and back. I clung to this phrase as a through line, and I found it comforting. Even though his heart had ceased, the cadence of time carried on, as it will for us all.
but within the cadence, there are echoes. The cadence is time back and forth beating. This project represents resolution as well as anti-resolution, a kind of a closure and a resistance to that closure. I'm satisfied that the choices I've made have honored my brother in the best way that I know how to do. I was happy that I was able to hit the publish button on the 10-year anniversary of his death. If nothing else, it was a way to move some of my feelings out of my body and into the world. But still, in the hundreds of times I've listened to it, I can't make out the words he's softly singing in the track I just played for you. It feels like 1 in 100 puzzles that I'll never solve. In death, all things remain unfinished. The cadence that is time back and forth beating. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I hope you heard that people, I just took myself off mute, but people were.
I saw them. I saw the clapping.
I wanted to open the floor if anybody has a question or a comment they'd like to ask Nikki. Somebody, Montana's asking about the story of your brother, and I think you can, if you want to answer that in however which way you feel comfortable doing.
Yeah, thank you.
She also says if you don't want to answer, that's okay.
Yeah, I'll just say that he was a beautiful human being with a lot of heart and a lot of generosity, and he died a lot younger than he should have.
Nikki, you mentioned like this project is an exercise and also going through your brother's objects and making certain choices and which you mentioned a little bit at the end of your presentation. But could you speak a little bit to maybe some of the things that you found that didn't make the website cut, or just what that whole experience was like, working through objects that you might not know the meaning of, but as you mentioned, are imbued with so much meaning?
Yeah, thank you for that question. You know, and any person in the course of life gathers so many things that have meaning to them. And this project was the first time that we went through Chris's things and made decisions. There was a musical project that he was working on at the time of his death that his partner spearheaded releasing it. So we had a cassette tape of music that came out, and then his partner and his best friend and me and my parents went through all this music, and he was so talented, and he was really hard on himself, and so not as much saw the light of day, I think, as should have or could have or maybe would have. You know, you live long enough and you let go of a lot of your insecurities, and you can just go out into the world and be yourself. And he was getting there, but he didn't quite get there. So it was really hard to have all of these tracks, and some of them were like the recording was messy, but it sounded so beautiful, or it was kind of sloppy, but you could tell that the germ of something was there. And we had to make some hard choices in deciding what to put onto this album that we released. And that, you know, you have to separate, in that instance, you have to like separate your reaction as a family member with, like, okay, being a bit more editorial about things and you know, hard-minded, and what is art. Whereas with this project, it was only me making all the decisions, and I got to pick and choose, and just pick and choose what spoke to me. And so there's a lot of images, like photographs he took that you know, he had quite an eye. In addition to being a musician, he had an eye for visuals, and he did little doodles that were beautiful and wrote these poems that were beautiful. And so really, I just kind of listened to my heart and picked up what spoke to me and what I thought deserved people to experience it.
Thanks for that. Yeah. And Andrea has a question.
Hi. Thank you so much. It was beautiful to see and hear you present this. Can you hear me?
I can hear you faintly. Get closer. Put your face right up to the camera.
I'm wondering if there was a particular moment or series of moments in which you knew that you were going to make an art project out of this and with it. And a related question is, like, how did working on this feel different? Like, was there a different quality of flow or engagement with this versus like all of the many other things you've worked on and put out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, so Chris died in 2012, and kind of like 8 to 10 months later, I felt like I needed to take some of what I was experiencing and feeling and witnessing and turn it into art. And I think that any kind of artist, that's the impulse, right? Like the experiences that you have in life, you know, creative people, anyone that's creative, how do you process and understand something? You turn it into art. And so that was the original thought. But then it took 10 years over time to make. And I had the initial impulse, and did a residency at Banff and did some work on it. But I had to learn some skills before I could do the whole thing. So I had to like learn Photoshop and learn how to build websites and like gain all these skills that took a long time. The quality that was different though is this felt more spiritual in a way, more like prayer, more like meditation, more like spirit communication. When I would go into my office and shut the door and just engage with this material, it did feel more profound than any other work that I've done outside of this. And necessary, right? Like I needed to, if I was going to keep living, I had to do this, frankly.
Yeah.
But I'm taking notes. I'm going to come up so that you can hear me. I really like how you opened up, because a lot of mornings I feel like this. You have some great phrases in there mixed with nice sounds and some irritating sounds. But you started out saying, I'm not anything but my own decay. And it's kind of the whole process of life. Some mornings we wake up and think, how much longer have I got? And what am I going to do with the time? Because you have a lot of emphasis on the clock ticking. And then you ended up, I won't take too much more time, that life is a constant resolution and anti-resolution, depending on our mood. So we move feelings out of our body and into the world. I just love your phrases.
Oh, thank you.
And what's another one? Oh, this one really moves me. There's a lot of rabbits in there too. The image of rabbits. And the crow in front of the rib cage, that's time. With the puppies, we couldn't decide they couldn't decide just between themselves whose moment it was. And a lot of times when I'm in a crowd, I feel like we're all competing for somebody's time and attention. Like puppies. Thanks.
Thank you so much. The puppies, that was Chris, that particular piece. He wrote that. So I'll credit to him for that really evocative image.
Maybe just going off the question of time, how time is operating for you in this piece, and maybe for you, personally. I know these 10 years is a kind of might be considered a milestone. Do you consider it that, or what is time?
Yeah.
How is time working for you?
Yeah, thank you. I think in grief and heavy grief and early grief, time gets really screwy and really out of, it gets like unsyncopated, and your former understanding of it, you lose it, right? And that's the discussion that we're having about mortality too, and understanding mortality and time is all wrapped up. I'm gonna have to think about that. That was a thread that I started. I don't want to follow that. I want to come back to that later in my life. But time, yeah, I think that our like linear Western colonial understanding of time is pretty rigid and pretty doesn't account for the way that life actually goes, and the way that death goes, and the way that, I don't know. I think that time is more fluid than we often think or talk about.
If anybody has maybe something they'd like to say, yeah.
Like the elegies of the ideals, and but the little window of commentary, I couldn't read it that. I was hoping to see that commentary.
Just a comment about the elegies and that the commentaries were difficult to see.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that.
There's some transcripts though too, right? When you navigate through the website.
Yeah, there is. So each audio and video file, I've made a transcript for it so that, yeah, it's to help with visual or audio impairment. But yeah, you can go there to read whatever is going on the screen that's maybe hard to read.
And I also recognize that we have some people who are online with us and just want to open the, oh, there we go. There's, okay, so there's a, I'll just read this out. This is a question from Jane. Jane, sometimes people think grief wanes over time. I'm finding that in this time in the world, there's a zillion things going awry, COVID, species extinction, et cetera, personal grief, or my individual grief feels amplified. Does this happen for you?
Definitely. Definitely feels like a hard time and a sad time. And it feels like in many circles, there's a impulse or an imperative to keep going, get back to normal, be productive, that I think is kind of gross. And I think that we all deserve to slow down and feel our grief and experience our grief and not jump back into things right away or, at all. That's my anti-capitalist statement.
Thanks, I was waiting for it.
Yeah.
Any more questions from the folks who are with us online? And Tana's just making a comment about how grief is different for everybody and its effects on the body and mind. That it's a part of life and we don't have any choice. We don't have any choice when somebody's going to die.
Yeah, that's right.
She said it's not a choice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Sure, there's a lot to say about, or a lot to feel and think about in terms of the choice that we have when it comes to feeling, experiencing grief. That it's not a choice.
Sure. And sometimes circumstances prevent grieving in a way that maybe we need to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But how can it,
how do we know how to grieve is, yeah. So with just three minutes left, I want to end with, for those in the room who might be thinking about doing a similar kind of project or something with objects they found from their loved ones, do you have any advice that you would offer our group?
Yeah, I think it can be really powerful and helpful to engage with an object from your loved one and either create something after it or create something new out of it. I know that you can I think you can go online and get ideas of what to do. I know lots of people take items of clothing and make pillows or blankets. Or you could pick up something and just sit with it and just meditate a little bit and get quiet and kind of wait for what is evoked in you, what stirs up, and maybe that will become a painting or a poem or a story. Or yeah, I think it's so important and helpful to do that kind of work.
Thank you so much, Nikki, and thank you all of you for coming out this evening. Let's give Nikki another applause.
Thank you so much. It's spaces like this, community spaces like this are so important, I think, and thanks for the work that you do, Danielle and VPL.
Thanks, Nikki. We've recorded this session, so if you wanted to view it again, we'll have the link on our website. And Nikki, can you also give the URL of your project again for everybody?
It's griefwave.com, all one word, griefwave.com.
Great. Thank you so much. I wish you were here because we're going to eat some cake. I wish I could smush your face with it through the screen. Yeah. But we'll, I'll see you soon. Okay.
It sounds good.
Have a really good night.
You too.
And good night to everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.